live in interesting times for the headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to put a hold on funds to the World Health Organization, accusing it of bias toward China and performing badly in the coronavirus pandemic. The largest supermoon of 2020, also the closest supermoon to Earth, also known as Pink Moon, rises on a world battling COVID-19. And we're live in London and Geneva. Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you for joining us tonight. These are unprecedented times. Events unfold and change by the minute. And as the days go by, we watch as our leaders cope with relentless march of this virus and disease. And now to the news. First, in the Philippines, the Philippine Arena complex of Iglesia ni Cristo in Bocaue, Bulacan is now ready to be a mega quarantine facility and will start accepting patients experiencing mild symptoms from the coronavirus disease next week. The Philippine government again expressed its gratitude to the church, and we have a report coming in from Erlo Bringas.
Next week, the Philippine Arena Complex will start its operation can now be used as a mega quarantine facility for patients experiencing mild symptoms from the coronavirus disease. Accommodate 300 patients with mild symptoms and house of 300 health workers. The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Disease team inspected the Ciudad de Victoria complex with Attorney G.P. Santos of Maligaya Development. The team inspected the quarters and the 3 tents that is now almost ready. As you can see here, this will be the beds of all COVID-19 patients. Every tent can accommodate more than 100 people. The facility is already complete with bed, refrigerator, and also neatly divided areas.
Ang requirement ng DOH ang susundin po natin. So most probably yung model natin sa Rizal Memorial ang gagamitin natin considering yung mga cloth at saka yung ibang materials not possible sa mga natin. So we will adhere with the DOH prescription on the design kasi sila nakakaalam po kung ano po yung dapat na natin gawin in terms of spacing at saka yung modular construction po na gagawin.
The Iglesia ni Cristo is also willing to set up more tents in the middle of the Philippine Sports Stadium. Meanwhile, the fully air-conditioned INC housing in the complex will be used as temporary shelters for health workers. Patients inside the Ciudad de Victoria can enjoy free food and free internet connection.
Nagpa-mobilize rin po tayo ng mga volunteers nag-call ho tayo ng mga volunteers na tutulong sa atin. And then, andyan pa rin naman ho yung ating mga military health workers na tutulong kapag kukulangin talaga tayo. So, kasama ho yan sa pagpaplano when we set up itong mga quarantine facility.
The whole Ciudad de Victoria can accommodate 2,000 people. The Philippine government expressed their gratitude to the Iglesia ni Cristo for their COVID-19 response effort by offering their huge compound in Bulacan to be used as a quarantine facility.
Northern Metro Manila plus Bulacan. So QC, Kamanava, and Bulacan ang isa-serve natin dito. So again, nagpapasalamat po tayo sa INC na sila mismo ang nag-offer na gamitin ito para tulungan ang ating gobyerno para i-address itong need natin for quarantine facilities.
Brother Dicerio Santos Jr., the Iglesia ni Cristo General Auditor, said that the church continues to work with both public and private sector stakeholders in coordinating assistance efforts.
Sa Philippine Arena, ang papayagang makapunta rin yung PUI, yung mga COVID patients, at mga health worker para sila ay magkaroon ng malaking espasyo para kahit bahagya ay mapigil natin itong paglaganap ng COVID. Ang totoo ay tumawag sa amin ng Malacanang at sinasabi sa amin na kung maaari ay magamit yung Philippine Arena. Agad-agad pinayagan ng kapatid Wardo Manalo pagkat alam niya at yung Philippine Arena ay napakalang espasyo para i-quarantine ang mga may sakit na COVID. Ay itong sinasabing ito ng Biblia, tulungan ng tao, kapwa-tao, na papanahon ngayon. Kaya ang Iglesia ni Cristo mulat-mula pa dalawang tuntunin, maglingkod sa Diyos at tulungan ng mga tao. Yan ang nagbunsod sa Iglesia ni Cristo.
For Eagle News or Lubingas, we live in interesting times.
Let's go to other news first. A deadly Pacific storm slammed into Fiji, tearing off roofs and flooding towns after leaving a trail of destruction in the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu. Take a look. Forecasters said Tropical Cyclone Harold weakened slightly overnight from a scale-topping Category 5 to a 4. But it was still lashing Fiji with winds of up to 240 kilometers per hour or 150 miles per hour. The official Nadraki Weather Service said the cyclone was offshore south of Fiji's main island Viti Levu, but passing closer to land than initially expected. Despite the downgrade, it said Harold remained extremely dangerous as it barrels eastward, threatening further damage in Tonga early on Thursday. Images on social media showed extensive damage at Nausori, just outside the Fijian capital Suva, with corrugated iron roofs peeled back by the ferocious winds. The main street of Ba in the island's north was submerged after the local river bursts its banks. Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama said, quote, emergency authorities are the only personnel allowed to travel. All Fijians should stay indoors, telling residents to keep themselves indoors and out of harm's way. The National Disaster Management Office said residents along much of the south coast, home to many of the country's major tourist resorts, or should evacuate. NDMO Director Vasiti Soko said 85 evacuation centers had been set up and officials were attempting to maintain social distancing to ensure that COVID-19 did not spread among those fleeing the cyclone. Fiji has 15 cases of the coronavirus, with all known sufferers in quarantine before the cyclone hit. Harold claimed 27 lives earlier in the Solomon Islands last week, and on Tuesday ripped through Vanuatu, destroying much of the country's second largest town, Luganville. Meanwhile, the largest supermoon of 2020, also the closest supermoon to Earth, also known as the pink moon, rises on a world battling COVID-19. Take a look. So-called pink, there's no noticeable color difference in this moon. It is a northern Native American reference to an early blooming wildflower which starts to pop up in the U.S. and Canada at the beginning of spring. As it is a supermoon, it's up to 14% bigger and 30% brighter as it reaches its closest point to Earth, known as its perigee. April supermoon is the third of the year, following the warm moon last March 9. Now, the next full moon is referred to as the flower moon, and this will take place on May 7. To other news now, U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to put a hold on funds to the World Health Organization, accusing it of bias towards China and performing badly in the coronavirus pandemic. President Trump told reporters he was going to put a very powerful hold on the WHO, the UN body whose biggest funding source is the United States. Take a look.
The WHO, that's the World Health Organization, receives vast amounts of money from the United States, and we pay for a majority, a biggest portion of their money. And they actually criticized and disagreed with my travel ban at the time I did it, and they were wrong. They've been wrong about a lot of things. And they had a lot of information early, and they didn't want to. They seem to be very China-centric. And we have to look into that. So we're going to look into it. We give a majority of the money that they get. And it's much more than the $58 million is a small portion of what they've gotten over the years. Sometimes they get much more than that. Sometimes it's for programs that they're doing, and it's much bigger numbers, and if the programs are good, that's great as far as we're concerned, but we want to look into it. World Health Organization, because they really are, they called it wrong. They called it wrong. They missed the call. They could have called it months earlier. They would have known, and they should have known, and they probably did know, so we'll be looking into that very carefully, and we're going to put a hold on money spent to the WHO. We're going to put a very powerful hold on it, and we're going to see. It's a great thing if it works, but when they call every shot wrong, that's no good. So that I don't know. I can only say that with regard to us, they're taking a lot of heat because they didn't want the borders closed. They called it wrong. They really called, I would say, every aspect of it wrong. Until
the funding freeze.
I'm not happy about it. Look, we fund it. Take a look. I mean, go through step by step. They said there's no big deal, there's no big problem, there's no nothing. And then ultimately, when I closed it down, they actually said that I made a mistake in closing it down, and it turned out to be right. But at the time, they did that. So we're just going to take a look at it. We fund it, and they seem to be. I said recently in social media, I said they seem to be very China-centric. That's a nice way of saying it, but they seem to be very China-centric. And they seem to err always on the side of China. And we fund it, so I want to look into it. Yes, please.
Thanks. A quick follow-up on that. So is it time to freeze funding to the WHO during a pandemic?
No, maybe not. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but we're going to look at it.
You did say that.
We give a tremendous, no, I didn't. I said we're going to look at it. We're going to investigate it. We're going to look at it. But we will look at ending funding. Yeah, because you know what? They called it wrong, and if you look back over the years even, they're very much, everything seems to be very biased toward China.
The new coronavirus isn't biased about who it infects. So why does data emerging from some states suggest that African Americans are bearing the brunt of the pandemic in the U.S.? Now, there's no nationwide data available on COVID-19 cases by race, but a pattern of over-representation by Black Americans has emerged in states or jurisdictions that are sharing the numbers. Dr. Anthony Fauci struck an emotional tone when he discussed the disproportionate death toll facing African Americans from COVID-19 during the White House Coronavirus Task Force press briefing. Let's listen in.
I just want to make a brief comment to get back to the discussion about the health disparities in the African American community, because it really is very important. And the reason I want to bring it up, because I couldn't help sitting there reflecting about sometimes when you're in the middle of a crisis like we are now with the coronavirus, it really does have ultimately shine a very bright light on some of the real weaknesses and foibles in our society. Health disparities have always existed for the African American community. But here again, with the crisis, how it's shining a bright light on how unacceptable that is. Because yet again, when you have a situation like the coronavirus, they are suffering disproportionately. As Dr. Berg said correctly, it's not that they're getting infected more often, is that when they do get infected, their underlying medical conditions, the diabetes, the hypertension, the obesity, the asthma, those are the kind of things that wind them up in the ICU and ultimately give them a higher death rate. So when all this is over, and as we've said, it will end, we will get over coronavirus, but there will still be health disparities, which we really do need to address in the African American community. Thanks.
Everyone.
Meanwhile, the U.S. president also said the U.S. has administered more than 1,700,000 coronavirus tests, more than any other country in the world. And he describes this as a call. He also described a call with Joe Biden about the coronavirus crisis and said the U.S. can expect a big surge in cases over the next 2 weeks. Take a look.
And he gave me his point of view, and I fully understood that. And we just had a very friendly conversation. Lasted probably 15 minutes. And it was really good. It was really good. Really nice. So a lot of the things that we've done, again, are going directly to the states. The states seem to be very happy. If they're not, they can call me directly. They can call Mike directly, and we'll make them happy. But tremendous progress has been made in a very short period. And I think very importantly, the progress has been made before the surge comes, because the next week and a half is going to be a big surge. When you do the testing, you have cases. Otherwise, you wouldn't know about the cases. People sit home, you don't know about it. But we have now done 1,790,000 tests nationwide. That's more than any other country in the world. Hence, we have more cases. And that number is growing by nearly 125,000 people per day.
To the United Kingdom now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson began a third day in intensive care Wednesday, battling the coronavirus, which has struck at the heart of the British government, infected more than 55,000 people across the country and killed nearly 6,200. Joining us live from London, here's Giancarlo Matera. Gian.
Hello, Alma.
Hello, Gian.
The headlines from the United Kingdom today. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson still remaining in intensive care. The British Prime Minister, as you said, has spent his second night in intensive care and his third in hospital. But Downing Street have insisted that he is in good spirits, stable and receiving standard oxygen treatment, but not invasive ventilation. But it is serious and frankly unsettling as the country struggles to fight the disease that has struck the Prime Minister himself. Dominic Raab, who is the first Secretary of State, has been designated as the man to step in the event that Boris Johnson is incapacitated, and he is now running the country where necessary. He chaired the daily coronavirus meeting in the Prime Minister's place on Tuesday. So let's listen in.
Before we get on to the detail, can I first give an update on the condition of the Prime Minister? I know a lot of people will be concerned about that. I can tell you he's receiving the very best care from the excellent medical team at St Thomas's Hospital. He remains stable overnight. He's receiving standard oxygen treatment and breathing without any assistance. He's not required any mechanical ventilation or non-invasive respiratory support. He remains in good spirits, and in keeping with usual clinical practice, his progress continues to be monitored closely in critical care, and we'll give further updates on the PM's condition when there are any material developments. He's not just the Prime Minister. For all of us in Cabinet, he's not just our boss. He's also a colleague, and he's also our friend. But all of our thoughts and prayers are with the Prime Minister at this time, with Carrie and with his whole family. And I'm confident he'll pull through. Because if there's one thing I know about this Prime Minister, he's a fighter. And of course, for us in Cabinet, we know exactly what he wants from us and what he expects from us right now. And following the Cabinet discussion today, I can reassure the Prime Minister, and we can reassure the public, that his team will not blink and we will not flinch from the task at hand at this crucial moment.
There is a fairly steady increase in numbers. It's possible that we're beginning to see the beginning of change in terms of the curve flattening a little bit. We won't know that for sure for a week or so. But what we're not seeing is an acceleration.
that were Sir Patrick Vallance, the Chief Specific Advisor for the British government. There's been some good news last couple of days, suggesting that things aren't continuing to get as bad as there could be. But certainly there's no suggestion that we're about to lift any lockdown. With the initial 3-week lockdown ending in the coming days, signs are that the lockdown will only continue. Now, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was admitted to intensive care on Monday evening after spending Sunday night in hospital, following concerns that he still had a cough and high temperature 10 days after being diagnosed with COVID-19. His transfer to intensive care is unprecedented for a Prime Minister during a national emergency. For many people, it brought home the seriousness of the disease that has so far seen 6,159 deaths in Britain, with a record 786 more reported in a daily update last Tuesday. No government on earth wants to admit that their leader has been admitted to hospital, and definitely no government wants to say that he requires treatment in intensive care unit. So these are stark times indeed, certainly. Alma?
Yes, Gian, yes, the focus right now is one of the focuses right now is the health workers. How are the health workers over there? How is the UK government taking care of them?
Well, the healthcare workers here in the United Kingdom, they've really been pulling together, helping each other out, supporting them. The government has been trying to get them more of the personal protective equipment that they've been asking for, PPE, for the doctors and nurses. We've even seen members of the public taking on the challenge of making these protective guards and masks themselves, using 3D printers that they may have, and donating it to their local healthcare workers. We've also seen grocery stores setting aside specific times for the key workers to be able to shop by themselves to get their essential food and other items without having to queue for hours with the general public. So yeah, we've been doing, every Thursday, we've been celebrating the work of the healthcare workers by taking to the streets and clapping for them as they return home from their shifts.
All right. So in Italy and France, they have strict curfews, and they've also imposed fines to violators. Has the UK toughened its lockdown measures? I heard that you have no curfew?
No, Alma, there is no curfew here. And while the UK has not been as strict in enforcing these lockdown penalties as maybe our neighboring countries in Europe, in extreme cases, there have been rules where the rules of social distancing have been violated numerous times. Large fines have been being issued. One example today, a father was fined over £400 because his son was caught out of the house multiple times without any valid reason. So while we have no curfew, the government is continuing to ask us to keep to the social distancing, not going out unless necessary, only for once a day for exercise. But if these rules continue to be broken, they may be forced to become more stricter.
Now, with regards to Brexit, the UK finally left the European Union, as we know, last January 31, but it remains in a transition period and has a deadline of end of 2020 to set a free trade deal with the EU. What is the current situation now with the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, now, during this transitional period we have before the end of the year, the UK is in a situation where we have no say or a vote in any EU matters, but we are still bound by the EU rules. So if we are unable to come up with a trade deal from the EU by the end of this 2020, the UK will leave the single market with no deal and will have to revert to the World Trade Organization rules. And as we know, the Brexit deal will face greater challenges ahead with now that the Prime Minister is in intensive care because of coronavirus, while even other key helpers in his government have either been infected or themselves self-isolating.
All right. Okay, thank you very much for your updates, Gian, and we'll be waiting. Keep the updates coming and keep yourself safe and stay healthy. Thank you for your time, Gian.
Thank you, Alma. I'm Jakarta Matera, EBC correspondent in the United Kingdom, and we live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, a senior clinical lecturer at the University of Exeter Medical School, Dr. Bharat Pankania, explained that what happens when coronavirus patients are moved into intensive care, as Prime Minister Boris Johnson is fighting the virus in London's St. Thomas Hospital's intensive care unit. Let's listen in.
The issue usually for people entering intensive care unit with a coronavirus infection is breathing problems. That's the commonest issue. So what happens with a coronavirus infection is there is a very large amount of inflammation that goes on in the lungs. We give this lung support with oxygen, either through a mask or through nasal prongs. And if need be, we can increase the level of oxygen and pump it in gently into the lungs, or even do the breathing for them if they get too tired with breathing themselves. It is well known that people in the older age groups, especially after 60, they tend to have more severe and serious infections. So 55 is not that far from 60. And of course, it can also happen to anyone in any age group. We just don't understand properly why some people have a more severe reaction in their lungs and other people not so. It's not all gloom and doom. ICU these days are very good places, they're experts, and people do recover, do get better, and do have a completely normal life afterwards. So I wouldn't put any mileage on just because they're in ICU that they are in grave danger. Of course they're ill, of course they need help, but you would also make a full recovery. That is also possible. I would roughly say for every day in ICU, you should give yourself 1 week to fully recover, repair, recuperate, and reset. We have to reset the inflammatory cycle that has started in your lungs. So we have to calm things down in your lungs, reduce the inflammation, reduce the number of chemicals that are coming in and damaging your lungs.
Eagle News, we'll be right back.
Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Alamin ang mga dapat at hindi dapat gawin ngayong panahon ng Enhanced Community Quarantine dahil sa banta ng COVID-19. Ano-anong mga establishmento ang papayagang magbukas ngayong quarantine period? Ang lahat ng basic utilities tulad ng tubig, kuryente, internet at telekomunikasyon. Mga kritikal na serbisyo gaya ng pangongolekta ng basura, mga punerarya at gasolinahan. Mga bilihan na mga pangunahing pangangailangan. Mga bangko, remittance center at capital market. at mga BPO at iba pang export-oriented na negosyo. Hindi mo napapayagang magbukas ang mga kasino at pasugalan kabilang ang mga pogo. At hindi rin papayagang tumanggap ng bagong booking ang mga hotel. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to!
Welcome back. The COVID-19 crisis is expected to wipe out 6.7% of working hours globally in the second quarter of 2020. Now, that is equivalent to 195 million full-time workers. That is according to a report from the International Labor Organization. Now, we have a report coming in. Joining us live is Jim Hipolito. Jim?
Hi, Alma. Here is the latest update from Geneva. The COVID-19 pandemic is having a catastrophic effect on working hours and earnings globally. A new ILO report highlights some of the worst affected sectors and regions and outlines policies to mitigate the crisis. Here is Mr. Guy Ryder, the Director General of the International Labor Organization. Let's listen it.
Well, since the ILO issued its first estimates on the job impact of the pandemic, that was on the 18th of March, a lot's happened. The COVID-19 virus has spread around the world. More and more countries are locking down their countries, either partially or totally, to such an extent that now 4 out of every 5 workers in the world lives in a country where some type of lockdown is in place. So, what is the job impact? We've had a look at the figures. It's a complicated job because there are so many varied situations around the world. Technical unemployment, full unemployment, reduced working time. So we've looked at reduced hours being worked, and we've tried to convert those into the full-time jobs lost. And the headline figure, unfortunately, is dramatic. It shows that in the coming 3 months, the second trimester of the year, we expect 195 million jobs to go around the world, job equivalents. They're spread out around the regions in percentage terms. The Arab world and Europe are the most affected. In sectoral terms, there are 4 sectors that we particularly highlight as being vulnerable: retail and wholesale, accommodation and food, business services and administration, and manufacturing. And that's where we are right now. Now, these are the short-term, the immediate impacts of a crisis which is hitting people with tremendous force and very, very quickly. It is an open question at this point how these employment figures will play out in the longer term. Impossible really to know where we might be at the end of this year, and we don't try to forecast a figure of where we might be at the end of this year. It depends fundamentally on 2 things: how successful the international community is in limiting this pandemic and defeating it, and secondly, the types of economic and social policies that we put in place to get the economy, to keep it in life now and to get it up and running again quickly once the pandemic recedes. Because things are changing so quickly, we'll be publishing another report on these figures probably in about 2 more weeks, and I think we have to be sure that we keep up to speed in this extremely fast-moving situation.
The ILO said during the past 2 weeks, the COVID-19 pandemic has intensified and expanded in terms of its global reach, with huge impacts on public health and unprecedented shocks to economies and labor markets. ILO said that a full 1.25 billion workers were currently employed in sectors identified as being at high risk of drastic and devastating increases in layoffs and cuts in wage and working hours. He said many of these people are in low-paid, low-skilled jobs, where a sudden loss of income is devastating. At the same time, some 2 billion people worldwide work in the informal sector, mainly in poorer countries, and are particularly at risk. ILO said it expected there would be a huge losses across all different income groups, especially in upper middle income countries. It said this far exceeds the effects of the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Mr. Ryder said we have to move fast, decisively, and together. The right urgent measures could make the difference between survival and collapse. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much for that report. How are you there over in Switzerland? Jim, kumusta naman po ngayon dyan?
We are all fine, Alma. Thank you.
Lockdown measures pa rin po?
Yes po, I think it will be until April 19, if I'm not mistaken.
April 19. And so, mahirap pa sa inyo gumalaw dyan sa Switzerland? Just for those our viewers who weren't able to see you yesterday, to give us an update kung paano po ang lockdown measures nyo dyan.
Well, hindi naman po lahat nakakagalaw ng maayos. Nakakalabas kami, walang curfew na inimpose yung government. Yung problema lang, lahat halos sarado except yung mga groceries and pharmacies.
Kumusta
And some banks are also open.
Banks, essential services po.
Exactly.
Exactly, okay. What about our health workers over there and the Filipinos over there? How are they helping each other in these times of crisis?
Well, the Filipinos here or the Swiss also. I mean, I think I must say that the people here are well disciplined in terms of really complying with the preventive measures imposed by the Swiss government.
Okay.
And in this way, we are taking ourselves and also we are taking care of our fellow men.
Okay. So, they're obeying the guidelines, guidelines of the government against.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, so how would you say yung mga health workers po natin diyan, may balita po ba kayo? How are they being
They are
taken care of?
working day and night, 24 hours. That is why every 9 o'clock in the evening, people would go out in their balconies to clap and make some noise just to show the support, their support to the health workers.
Is there a lack of health workers now in Switzerland?
So far, I haven't heard anything, but I think they are really doing very well.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim, for your updates and always looking forward to your news. Maraming salamat po. Thank you for your time. Stay healthy po.
Thank you as well, Alma. From Geneva, Switzerland, this is Jim Hippolito, and we live in interesting times.
To Alberta, Canada now, the Premier, Jason Kennedy, said as many as 6,600 people could die as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak in the province. That is, if people don't follow the government's guidelines to halt the spread of the virus. Premier Kenny said he expects the province would see 25% unemployment too by the time the pandemic ends. And we have a report coming in from Thomas I. Likeness. Thomas.
Premier Jason Kenney in a dinnertime broadcast told Albertans the most probable scenario would see the infection rate peak in mid-May. By the end of the summer, Kenney says there could be up to 800,000 infections and the death rate somewhere between 400 and 3,100. Kenney says under the more serious but less likely scenario, infections would peak at the beginning of May, but we'd have up to 1 million cases, and by the end of the summer, between 500 and 6,600 deaths. The Premier says he doesn't want to frighten people with these numbers. He admits they are sobering, and will they come about? A lot will depend on just how people behave between now and then.
I want Albertans instead to see them as a challenge, perhaps the greatest challenge of our generation. Those numbers are not inevitable. How this actually plays out, how many people are infected, how many die, and whether we overwhelm our healthcare system, all of that depends on us and our choices.
How long will these public health measures remain in place? Kenny says things might ease up by the end of May, but it's going to be a slow, gradual return to normal.
But we simply cannot risk letting the virus loose in Alberta. That would create a public health catastrophe, which would force an even more stringent lockdown in the future, leaving our economy even further battered.
As things ease up, there's going to be other measures. An aggressive system of mass testing. Up to 20,000 tests are planned each day. There will be precise tracking of close contacts of infected people. Strong border screening. Now, the premiers have been very critical of the federal government for taking so long to close the borders to foreign travelers. So he says even though we don't have any control over who comes into the province, he will be screening very strictly and quarantining international arrivals. And those quarantine orders, they're going to be monitored as well. He says they'll use technology, including smartphone apps. As well, the Premier would like to encourage the use of masks in crowded places, places such as mass transit. Kenny says the economy will be slow to recover because it's not only been affected by the pandemic. You see, energy is the province's big industry, and we're caught in the middle of a price war with Saudi Arabia and Russia, so we've got these twin problems, the pandemic, the price war. As always, I wish you good health, take care of others, and take care of yourselves. Stay home, stay safe, and stay tuned to Eagle News for accurate and balanced coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. In Edmonton, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Thomas. Stay safe as well. Saudi Arabia's health minister warned of a huge spike in coronavirus cases of up to 200,000 within weeks. Take a look. Now, this warning comes a day after the kingdom extended the duration of daily curfews in multiple cities, including the capital Riyadh, to 24 hours in a bid to limit the spread of the deadly virus. Within the next few weeks, studies predict the number of infections will range from a minimum of 10,000 to a maximum of 200,000. That was according to the official Saudi press agency, citing Health Minister Tawfiq Al-Rabi'a. Rabi'a, who warned the kingdom faces a critical moment in the fight against the virus, said the projection was based on 4 studies by Saudi and international experts. Saudi Arabia has so far reported a total of 2,795 infections and 41 deaths from the disease, according to the latest tally released by the Health Ministry on Tuesday. The kingdom, which has reported the highest number of infections in the Gulf, is scrambling to limit the spread of the disease at home. Saudi Arabia on Monday announced round-the-clock lockdowns on the cities of Riyadh, Tabuk, Dammam, Daran, and Hafuf, according to the Interior Ministry. The same measures were also imposed on the governorates of Jeddah, Taif, Qatif, and Khobar, according to the ministry. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of people left Wuhan on Wednesday after a 76-day travel ban was lifted on the Chinese city where the coronavirus first emerged. Previously quiet train and bus stations bustled as an exodus began from the city of 11 million, with some passengers wearing hazmat suits. Take a look.
感觉昨天晚上激动的没睡着，在家休息了2个月，头一次复工比较激动。
Up to 55,000 people are expected to leave Wuhan just on Wednesday by train, according to government estimates. Steady streams of cars were on the roads heading out of the city Wednesday morning after barricades on its outskirts were dismantled, with a ban on outbound travel being lifted at midnight. Ferries, trams, and taxis resumed operations, and the airport also opened again for domestic flights, with queuing passengers in protective wear wheeling cases. State news agency Xinhua said there would be around 200 inbound and outbound flights leaving the city on Wednesday, restrictions began to be eased for residents of Hubei, which has suffered the majority of China's officially reported 3,300 deaths about 2 weeks ago. Authorities, however, waited until Wednesday to allow normal traffic out of Wuhan amid lingering fears elsewhere in China that people from the city pose a risk. Now, those fears were clearly evident throughout Wuhan despite the buzz of excitement. Passengers also had to submit to temperature checks and show a green health code on their phone, meaning they are considered healthy, allowing them to travel. Part of the health code approval is based on their neighborhood having been declared virus-free. Many travelers from Wuhan will also face 2-week quarantines in their destination provinces. Eastern Zhejiang province said it will make all arrivals from Wuhan for the next 2 weeks have a nucleic acid test for the virus. Various restrictions of movement within the sprawling metropolis will also remain in place to guard against a second wave of infections. The state-run People's Daily newspaper warned on Wednesday that opening up does not mean releasing control. Officials have said schools in Wuhan will remain closed and citizens are being discouraged from leaving the city or even their own residential neighborhoods. Meanwhile, to India now, its first drive-through testing center has opened in New Delhi, requiring a doctor's prescription and costing roughly $60. India has so far recorded over 5,000 coronavirus cases. But since it has so far carried out little testing among the 1.3 billion population, experts caution the real number is likely to be far higher. Take a look.
This is the viral transport media which preserves the swab once it's taken.
Doctor's prescription is extremely essential because it regulates the testing requirement. Currently, if someone doesn't have any symptoms and just out of anxiety they want to get the test done, then it is not advisable.
Manish, left हाथ बाहर निकालो.
Excellent. In other news, Japan's sushi industry is dominated by men, but a growing number of women in the country are training and working as sushi chefs in some of the most revered restaurants and institutions. Here are 3 women trying to carve a space for themselves in the masculine world of sushi. Take a look.
お寿司職人ってほとんど、数名はいらっしゃると思うんですけども、ほとんどやっぱりいなくて、でやっぱり一般的にも女性の寿司職人なんてって言われる部分があると思うんですが、だからこそやってやろうじゃないかっていうちょっと男勝りなところがありまして、でもうこれしかないなって思いました。
やっぱり家庭を守るのは女性みたいなところが意識が強くて、寿司職人で言えばやっぱり夜の仕事なので、女性にとってはちょっと厳しい仕事であるのかなっていうのもありますし、だからなんて希望する絶対量が少ないんじゃないかなって私は個人的には思ってます。
ただ今はもう時代の流れとともに労働環境も変わってきましたので、そのあたりは男性女性問わず働きやすい環境にはなってきたのかなと。
Now, these Filipino kids from Spain send their warm greetings and heartfelt thanks to all COVID-19 frontliners. Spain is one of the countries with more than 100,000 confirmed coronavirus infections. As of the latest tally from the Johns Hopkins University, as of Wednesday, April 8, Spain already has almost 142,000 cases, with more than 14,000 recorded COVID-19 related deaths and more than 43,000 recoveries. It is only second to the U.S. with the most number of cases in the world. Let's take a look.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Thank you to all our frontliners. Love you. Thank you so much. A tots els metges, infermeres, personal de l'hospital i tots els treballadors essencials en la crisi de Covid-19, moltes gràcies.
And may we leave you with a word of hope. Together we are strong. Together we can persevere. Getting through this will take everyone working together. Let's do our part. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times. Good night.